Blessings everyone, how's it going? In this video, we are going to be talking about animal souls, animal spirits, but not necessarily the topic of, say, spirit animals or animal totems or animal signs and symbolisms. No, in this video, we're actually going to be talking about how animals themselves and what is going on with their higher selves, the roles that they play, and how we can also better understand how we fit into the spiritual ecosystem by not only observing them, but of course seeing what they contribute to this reality experience as we all go through this collective evolution in consciousness. When the question comes up, does an animal have a higher self? Does an animal actually have a multidimensional spectrum? Well, the answer is yes, but the relationship between an animal and that higher self and the way a human in form has a higher self and connects to their higher self is a bit different. And we can see this as we, observe our pets or observe other animals and things like that, where 1 minute they are, kind of just playing with a toy or trying to eat garbage out of the bin, and then the next they are suddenly beaming these high frequency energy codes into the entire atmosphere, or they are interacting with a spirit or a consciousness that we might or might not be able to actually perceive or interact with ourselves. They are assisting us when it comes to our own spiritual journey, our own spiritual works or workings, and they are actually very much embodying their higher self and their higher levels in a very clear, observable way. Animals themselves don't have the same relationship with that process that we do because they don't necessarily go through a process of having to integrate for embodiment when it comes to their own higher self, right? When we think about a human body, right, our physical vehicle, because all of our bodies, whether it's a cat, whether it's a human, whether it's a dog, a bird, all bodies are simply organic vehicles, organic machines that house consciousness. For a human, embodying their higher self, right, calling that energy through and having it expressed through form, the energy and the information from the higher self and beyond goes through a process of integration and acclimation. When it comes to animals, it's a little bit different. There really is no struggle. There really is no integration or acclimation process. And that's because animals don't store the ego the same way. They don't have a lower ego experience that actually conditions the body or the consciousness or the lower consciousness to maybe actually operate in a way that is uncomplimentary to all of those higher experiences. An animal's higher self or an animal's higher levels have actually chosen to come in as an animal in form, right, like a dog or a cat. It's because much of their work, much of their participation in this reality experience does not require being in form all of the time. So for that particular incarnation, that higher self, that soul, will be in and out of complete connection with their body on an on and off kind of basis. And when that higher self is not coming through that cat, that dog, that bird, that animal, then the animal actually is living its animal life, right? It is still very much an intelligent, loving, emotive, and walking, talking, thinking being. But when that higher self, that higher soul comes through, it comes through more easy, and there's always an open door, an open window there. Whereas, when we watch the awakening process for, a lot of humans, well, that might not necessarily be an open door or an open window. Sometimes there can be a bit of a struggle. Animals don't go through that struggle. Performing on the land itself, interacting with other souls, other spirits, or assisting other animals with their own spiritual process and progress. Which of course leads into the question, are animals soul family, or can we have animals as part of our Oversoul group and our Oversoul collective, or do they have their own Oversoul? And the answer to that is, it really depends. Because when we talk about the Oversoul, and I'll put a link to my Oversoul videos down below because you know I love to talk about that topic. That's a big part of my function when I'm not online. The Oversoul itself has hundreds of thousands of expressions of parts of itself actually incarnate at one time, right? Running through this entire experience, collecting experience, going through its own evolution process, doing all kinds of energy exchanges and things like that. Animals, of course, are a part of that experience. Some animals may actually be of souls, of higher selves, that yes, are a part of your soul family or of your Oversoul group, or of a soul group or an Oversoul family that is actually connected to your Oversoul in one form or another. And some animals have their own unique Oversoul group that agreed to not incarnate as humans, but actually work either with humans or independently of humans. And very much like with an Oversoul kind of connection or an Oversoul experience, even when we as humans leave our bodies behind or transition, we go back and reintegrate this experience, this expression with our Oversoul. And if we choose to come back or we choose to reincarnate, if that is something that is a part of that higher self's priority or that Oversoul's priority, we may. And sometimes we come back as another human, or we come back as maybe something else. Well, animals have the very same kind of experience. And when it comes to the topic of, well, do our animals come back to us, right? Do we have animals that actually come back to us and work with us again after they have transitioned, after they have left our lives? The answer is yes. In many cases, there are connections like that, especially when you have a very, very tight bond. And it all depends on what is going on with those soul agreements, what is playing out in that being's journey. Of course, if that animal is a part of your Oversoul group and that animal's higher self has just elected to say, no, I really don't feel like being a human, let me go and do most of my work on the etheric and, go through my animal body when it is appropriate, when it is necessary, and when it serves, that may also be the case, but you still have that soul family bond, that soul family connection. Some are of groups that just choose to actually work on the land, right, as a part of Gaia in service to the planet, and some are parts of groups that agree to work with us. When you are actually thinking about connecting with an animal that may have transitioned, remember, even if that expression, right, that expression of that being has transitioned and even reincarnated into a new animal or into a new body, it is still possible to exchange communications with that being because that higher self and that Oversoul still host that expression. That expression can still come forward. Once again, very much like if we are communicating with the expression and the soul of a human that has maybe transitioned and reintegrated with their Oversoul, reintegrated with all of their higher levels, that expression, right, the expression of everything that they ever were in that life is still around and is still very much available for communication and interaction and all of that good stuff. A good example of this is actually with my old cat Rosie and the story of Persephone. You guys have seen Persephone here and there. She doesn't show up in videos as much as Rambo did, but that's just kind of her, and we'll talk about that too. With Persephone, it was a very interesting story, learning to actually connect with the higher selves of animals and see how they actually play into this cosmic experience. So almost a decade ago, I had a cat, Rosie. She was my first cat that I had actually brought into my life, right? My first pet that I ever had as an adult, not into, not through family or anything like that. And I got her back in 2000, I want to say 2006. But 10 years ago, she actually ended up passing away and transitioning. And she actually was diagnosed with an inoperable cancer. And I remember in those last few days, just going through all kinds of hell. There were also a lot of other things going on. A friend of mine had died just a few months before. There was a lot of death that year. And the night before I took her in to let her go, I remember sitting on my bed and I asked her to, just tell me, is it time? Is it time? And I remember her giving me this look and that there was some kind of exchange going on. At that point, I was not so clear on what I could qualify that interaction. Was I actually talking to her, or was I talking to her higher self? But now that I think about it, now that I've kind of, come a lot farther, right? It's been a decade, you evolve, you grow. I'm understanding that she had already, in a sense, left her body. And so that higher self, that soul, was, of course, working through that body, but she wasn't really in it as much as she was before, because that higher self is dipping in and out. And the look she gave me was basically, we're going to have a talk, and yes, it's time to let me go. And that night, I had this very interesting dream where I was actually sitting in a hospital waiting room, which is very interesting. Very clinical, white walls, white floors, but I knew where I was, or what it was, or what it was supposed to be. And I was actually talking to a lady across the hallway. We were just kind of sitting in a couple of chairs. And this woman, it was kind of funny. She looked a lot like Bonnie Hunt. That's the actor who played the wife of Tom Hanks in The Green Mile. And I knew that that was Rosie. And she started talking to me about what was going on and that she was okay. And she was saying, look, I started leaving this body. I started leaving this body behind when my new body was born and brought into your life. And she was saying this cancer occurred the moment I found a new body. And so I haven't even been in this body for a good while. I've been working with you, but almost from an out-of-body kind of experience. So I'm not suffering. Yeah, my physical body's not doing very good, but I'm still with you. Just understand that this is how things go for animals. And I thought that was actually very, very profound. It did not make the loss all that easier, but it did give me a lot of context into what was happening. And then, of course, the next day, I took her and let her go. Took her into the vet and all of that. What I found interesting was that the year before was when Persephone showed up. There were already 3 other cats in the house. There was Rosie, Toby, and Rambo. And Persephone showed up and would not leave on my birthday. And this was 10 years ago, and she'll be 10 years old this year. And she actually started to expect a lot of Rosie's personality traits. But what was really interesting was that after Rosie actually passed away, she actually changed. Not necessarily changed as in turned completely into Rosie, but actually started embodying a lot of that energy, her disposition, all of that started to actually mirror a lot of what I recall of Rosie's temperament and Rosie's energies, Rosie's frequency, the way she would communicate, and all of that. Yes, I believe a lot of that was instinctual. She had, of course, then become the only female in the house, which, for the longest time, for Persephone, after that, it was all boy humans, all boy cats. But she ended up actually going above and beyond that as well. And so it was a very, very interesting sort of understanding of, okay, this higher self is actually transitioning from animal to animal. And I actually still can communicate with Rosie. Rosie shows up a lot, especially when I need that extra support, when I'm calling for that extra support from my guides. For those of you who recall, last year, also tragically, we lost Rambo in June. And, you know, when he passed away, he actually ended up showing up right away and presented his higher self, which looked nothing like I would imagine he would have looked like. I mean, still a big guy. I always imagined him as a big guy. But he ended up actually looking more like almost like a dark-haired Chris Pratt. And he showed up in this, you know, very nice, very clean, you know, perfectly pressed business suit. And he also was out of his body the night that, you know, I said goodbye. And he was explaining a lot of things that were going on and why this was happening and how, you know, this is just something that is a part of it. You know, he needed to let go of that body. And it was also pretty much forcing that to kind of happen. It was strange. There was a point where I did actually take out, you know, I attempted to actually pay for more treatments, pay for more work, and my debit card just suddenly stopped working and was blocked and was not allowed to do anything. And I thought that was very, very strange. The balance on the procedure was 222. And then the next day, I woke up in the morning and he was, you know, I could hear him purring in the room and he said, "I unlocked your debit card. Go get yourself something to eat. You need to eat." Very, very interesting stuff. Sorry for the tangent, but I just felt moved to kind of share that story and, you know, let you guys know that, yeah, in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to them getting ready to leave their bodies, their higher selves even will disengage from a lot of what is going on with their bodies. And of course, we love them, we care about them, but their souls themselves have a very different relationship with the body than we do. So I could go on about that forever. And maybe I will. Maybe I will go on about that in a few more videos. It's all actually quite a very rich tapestry. You know, animals themselves and their higher selves are, of course, way more active on the spiritual than on the physical. Another interesting thing with Rambo was very recently, I was actually going through a lot of integration work this early April, and he had actually shown up to me and was showing me images of another cat that I had had almost 20 years ago, back in the mid-90s, my cat Beringer. He was this adorable tuxedo cat, and he was actually brought in by another one of our cats just as a stray. His name was Wolfgang. Wolfgang was our cat. He deserves a video series all his own. But Beringer got brought in just out of nowhere, and that was not Wolfgang's disposition. He was a very introverted, independent cat. We could not have other cats. He did not like other pets and animals. And yet, he brought in Beringer. And Beringer actually became, you know, for the time that we had him, my cat. He never really completely domesticated. He really preferred to be more of this indoor-outdoor half wild cat, which was okay for the time, but he was mine. You know, he came and slept in my bed that very night. He didn't leave my side whenever I would go out and play, you know, in the apartment complex or the woods behind our apartment complex. He would follow me around. Very, very different kind of energy. And then Rambo revealed, like, that was me as well. It's very, very cool. Very, very cool to kind of get that context into how the transmigration of that soul played out and is continuing to play out. And when it's time, I look forward to, you know, meeting my soul friend, my soul family in that way again. So that's just a little chat I wanted to bring to you guys. Something a little bit different, but also something very near and dear to my heart. I am a very big animal lover. I'm going to leave you with that for now. Let me know if you have any questions or comments in the down bar below. And yes, I would absolutely love to come back and reopen this topic and maybe even talk about some tips and tricks for how to actually commune and connect with animal spirits as well as your animal's higher self, whether it is one that you already have in form, walking, talking, living with you, or maybe even one that you'd like to reconnect to from your past. So that's all for now, guys. Thank you so much for dropping by. Don't forget to give this a like, a share, and a subscribe. You know I appreciate it, and I will be back soon with more. Take care.